Welcome to the Spa Girls podcast, the self-publishing podcast for authors. You're in the right place for the best writing, marketing, and publishing advice, plus interviews with industry experts and best-selling authors. I'm Cheryl Phipps.
I'm Shar Barrett.
And I'm Trudy J. We are without Wendy, who is
We
swanning off an
Swanning
amazing
around.
holiday.
We're so jealous. Oh my
So
gosh,
jealous.
so jealous.
She's been, if you want to go and have a look, been posting some of her photos on her Facebook groups and Facebook page, I think, for Wendy Valor.
Yeah.
So go and have a look. So she went to the not only the place where the most recent Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice movie was filmed, like the house that was supposed to be Mr. Darcy's house, but didn't she went to the original BBC one too, didn't she? Am I making that up? So she's been to all these sets or scenes,
so many amazing places.
And Buckingham Palace, just quietly.
And the Earl Grey tea. Blooming homestead. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's amazing. We're all
and
jealous.
she didn't take us, so
no matter how many times you begged to get in her suitcase.
That's friends for you.
I know, they just desert you. Anywho,
okay.
But
here we are, and we're not bitter.
We're still able to sort of manage. So we will
and be happy
continue on and be happy, mostly, kind of, sort of, in a vague way for her, that she is getting that amazing experience, and we are here. And we are talking about covers that convert today. And it's a hot topic, I think. I think everyone kind of has opinions on that. Everyone thinks, certainly the opinions on their own covers and what they should be, but we just want maybe just to kind of give you some basics and what you definitely have to have on a cover, and some of the things that you need to be thinking about when hopefully you're talking to your cover designer, and your expectations of what the cover should look like and how what's going to sell, because basically that's the point of a cover. It's not to make a pretty wrap for your book. It's like what's going to sell, and what readers are going to be attracted to, like
and maybe a couple of no-nos that are definitely something you should consider not doing.
Definitely. So we're going to talk covers and also titles and subtitles, I think, but let's start with what should be on a cover. Cher, do you want to go through that perhaps?
Well, I think that there's about 4 things that are very basic. So you definitely want a title. You definitely want your name, and you need those both to be quite visible. You may want a subtitle, and I think, Trudy, you're going to talk a bit later about symbols and stuff like that, but you may have something like a logo, and I know a lot of people do, and that's quite good if you've got a series to carry that through. And I lost my train of thought. Series name. Did I not say that? Yeah, a series name. That's quite important. It's quite important to me. I always have my series name on it. And I think it's how you present those on the cover that is the most important, because once you've decided on it, you need to decide on how it's going to look on the cover. And I don't even know if that comes first or that comes after, Shar, because, like, you've got to have a picture before you decide on the typography, don't you think?
Yes, unless it's a typography cover, because there are some covers that are, when the term typography cover, it's sort of the emphasis is on the beautiful lettering, and then you'll see these, particularly in romantic fantasy covers, they'll have, it's a pretty background, but it's often a solid color with sort of some symbols or swirly bits, and the emphasis is on the typography.
I always think of the Liba Dugo, actually I don't even know if I'm saying that name right, covers when I think of those pictorial covers. I think she was, for me, one of the first authors that I noticed doing those. I mean, there are loads of them out there now, but
it's huge.
They are. It's definitely, I would say that's probably the biggest cover trend at the moment, is actually going towards typography covers.
Even in cozy mysteries, it's definitely a thing at the minute.
And you look at authors like Lucy Score with her, and to be fair, they were trade pub, the print versions, but it's you've got that. I guess you would call it the book talk effect, because a lot of the book talkers prefer those typography covers rather than the sort of the in your face clinch covers, for example, of your
I remember
going romance.
Anna Huang said that to us when she got print covers specifically for TikTok. And at the time I was like, what does she mean? Like I didn't really understand. And now it's exactly what you're talking about. It's those TikTok people who love the typography and pretty, and we're not symbol covers.
Absolutely. And we're not saying design it with TikTok in mind, but
no.
but that's just a decision that was made and obviously paid off for her. But I think in terms of, so when I make covers, I think about the typography first, and because then you need to create the image, like it has to work with the typography. So and it works together. That's the key. But I think the really, really important, as Cheryl was saying, is it needs to be readable, the entire cover at a thumbnail size. And so often the elements are stripped down of a cover, so you can't have like small details because they won't be visible. Most people will be buying your book from the phone, so you've got to think about it that size.
And there's a few practical things. Like I had a cover that was, or a title that was Ringmaster, and I always struggled to get that bigger word. I know it sounds silly, but big long words are really hard to get on a cover. And especially now when we're dealing with like a lot of people buying on online, so everything, as Shah says, is like tiny thumbnail size. So I think that's something we need to think about. And even in terms of the pen name or the name, the author name that's on the cover, I always remember, I think it was, I want to say Bella Andre, but I can't remember, someone talking about how they had their name bigger than the title, because that was their brand and that's what they wanted people to remember. And they wanted people buying a Bella Andre book, or she wanted people buying a Bella Andre book rather than this particular book with this title. So that was part of her decision. But if you've got a really big long name, then you're not going to fit that in any, it's going to have to be tiny down the bottom, and maybe you're okay with that, but that's just a decision you have to make kind of consciously, I guess.
I don't think it should ever be like so small it's like it's almost non-existent. I don't think it should ever be like that. But I think when you're talking about somebody like Bella Andre, who already had a following perhaps when she came to that decision, because covers change and you change the way you do things based on yourself and how well you're doing, but also on what's happening at the time. So I think sometimes saying you have to have the title so much bigger than your name or vice versa, that can change. But for me, your name should always be readable. It should always be a decent size, even if it's not as big as the title. It shouldn't be just a little afterthought at the bottom, The series title, sure, that doesn't have to be huge, but I think that title and your name are the two most important things.
And they need to be readable. I mean, to be fair, my name is way smaller than my title. I'm not saying that that's something that we necessarily have to do. It was just, one of those decisions, and it needs to be, as you say.
Mine definitely is.
Yeah.
Great to have a look.
She's checking. For those people not watching YouTube, she just checked her covers to make sure what she does.
I knew what I was talking about.
But that's just interesting that the name, and it depends how. Just make sure it's readable, as she says. What else can we say about the title itself? Like, is there
the title of the book, you mean? I mean, this is very genre dependent, because there are often trends that go with genres. And so I think it's the old story, and we've said it before, but look at see what's selling in the where you want to be. And not saying copying, but if you've got something that is, if the titles, for example, if you're writing Mountain Man Romance, you will often see the word mountain man or mountain in there amongst either the subtitle or the actual title itself. So it could be, captured by the mountain man, whatever. And if you think, oh, there's so many of those, there's a reason there's so many of those, because first of all, that keywords pop up in Amazon if the title is part of your keywords. And second of all, that's what readers are looking for. So you don't want to do it something like, whispering trees with my man kind of thing, like that. Nobody's going to be, that's not like, no,
it's reader expectation.
So
right?
you want to
like,
be
exactly.
This is not the time to be
coy,
coy or
subtle.
No.
and frankly unique. To be honest,
yes.
you want to, particularly when you're starting out. When you're a million seller, you do you.
Do whatever you like.
Just go for it. But when you're starting out, you wanna look like you fit. You want to be part of the crew.
So let's
slap that in the face.
I just want to draw that out because you talk about mountain men having mountain. There's other genres, like, so for example, for me in fantasy and romantic fantasy and those kind of genres, and these are a lot of the ones that have the typography covers. There's, for example, it started with Akata, so A Court of Thorn and Roses. So that is so popular now. We don't even have to say the full title. We can just say the acronym for it, Akata, and people will know what you mean. Just saying that's how popular Sarah Maas is. But they are all those longer ones. A something of something and something is such a common kind of thing. And you said there's kind of ones title kind of.
And cozy mysteries, definitely. There's a lot of puns on words. I think some people are like, oh my God. But actually, you know what you're getting because there's a play on words. Often, especially if culinary cozy mysteries, there's a play on the words with a food involved, and so you immediately know what you're going to get. And if that's what you're looking for, you found it,
And it's about the emotion, like there's something cozy and funny about there being a pun. It just fits with the whole feel of that genre.
Absolutely.
And then you go to something like science fiction or military science fiction or something like that, and it's very much a different feel. And so they're going to have a different kind of title, and it often maybe involves spaceships or cyber or something, like there's those kind of words that indicate kind of more either military or scientific or those kinds of things, and that's a different feel because it's a different kind of audience. And that's
or like a thriller, and you throw in the word like blood or fear or
dark,
and
whatever.
You've got the vibe, and that's what it's all about. I think is getting that right from the get-go.
And I used to, so back in the day when I worked for magazines and we would create new magazines, like we were made several in my time when I was there, we were doing new magazines and had to think of the title, and my boss used to say, it doesn't really matter what the title is per se, because we can create a brand around it and we can do this, like we could have whatever we wanted and we could create that brand. And that's what I came into when I first started with writing books and doing what we're doing. But I've completely changed my mind on that now. Like I think that actually you really, the title is an opportunity to allow it to do some of the heavy lifting in terms of the marketing of your book. So you need to, don't just whack any old title. You need to really think about it. It's metadata. It's part of how people are searching for your book online, and how they're going to find it, and how Amazon and the other retailers are going to give the book to the right reader by the title. So don't
and I would say it can be anything. I think all of us, we often get quite set, and we have an idea and we clasp onto that, and that's we're going with that. And sometimes that is not going to serve you in terms of sales or reaching readers. And so I think, as hard as it is, it's good to have an open mind, particularly when you're starting to really know that the readers, when they read your title, they're going to know the type of book that they're going to get from you.
And you make me think of another really good point is, so people think, okay, I'm going to ask my readers what they think about it, and they'll go to their newsletter list and they'll say to their newsletter, which is the best title, thinking that they're asking the right readers. And I think sometimes they'll say what they think they like, but they aren't actually necessarily the right. And a better way to maybe do that would be to try some Facebook ads and test. I mean, often we talk about testing covers and imagery, but I think maybe you could even test titles and just see which one gets the most likes or most hits or most people clicking through, and use that as a way. It's just a little bit less.
I think I always treat, when authors ask readers for their opinions, I always cautiously hesitate. It's fine to ask, but people aren't great about telling people. I often want to tell you what they think is the right answer or that you want to hear, and B, they're not often honest. So they might like a really flowery title, for example, Whispers in the Trees for the Mountain Man romance. Would they buy that? No, they're not going to buy that, because when they're looking through their Mountain Man romance, going back to Mountain Man's, they're not going to buy Whispering in the Trees. It sounds like it's not. It sounds like a non-fiction. So even though it might be a nice title, as what I'm saying, and they're not coming at it from a sales perspective, which is what you have to be.
Or marketing,
you have to be brutally sales oriented.
And in some ways, the people who are on your newsletter are a much warmer audience than the majority of people who are going to be.
They already know you.
They already know you. They already have a connection. And if you bring out a book called Whispering Trees, I can't even remember the title that you gave 2 seconds ago, the Whispering Mountain, no, not even mountain, not that Whispering Trees. If they know it's a book by you and they've read books by you before and they know that you're a good author, they're going to buy the weird ass Whispering Tree book, whether or not it has
basically you could call it anything and they'd buy it.
And so they're not a good example. Whereas what you want is someone who reads your genre but has not read your books, and that's a much bigger risk as a reader. Like, I don't know about you, but it's how you feel about it. But whenever I'm reading a book by an author that I've never read before, it always feels like a much bigger risk, because you just don't know how they're going to be. Are they going to? Is this going to be a waste of my time or not? It's an investment of my time, and I want to know. So
exactly. So I guess have an open mind on your title, particularly if you're fixated on a title that you've been had in your head. Just be open.
And don't be too cutesy, unless you're in cozy mystery, and then you can be cutesy, but don't be too
subtle,
but not even that, like kind of too smart about it, too overly there's a word and I can't think of it, but like overly
I'm gonna hint at it, but actually I'm the only one that really gets the hint.
There you go. That's exactly
I'm the only one that really knows what it means.
I just don't think you ever, as an author, you ever want to be in a position where you're trying to be smarter than your readership or smarter than
if you have to explain it, then
actually that's a really good point. If you say your title to a genre reader and they're like, huh, then
nah.
So that's the title. I think we've said most of the things we wanted
we've
to.
Kind of covered off
the other. Oh no, sorry. 2 more things that I'm glad I write these things down, because I'd forget about it otherwise. So words that indicate your tropes and your or universal fantasies. So we all used to groan about it, but back in the day when or maybe still do actually, like Harlequin and Mills and Boon used to write the billionaire's baby's lost. No, the billionaire's lost secret baby or whatever. And they were indicating the tropes, but it was exactly what needed to be there, because it was telling people what the tropes were like. And so someone who goes, oh my god, I love a lost baby story or whatever, a hidden pregnancy, it's my second chance dream or whatever, like that told them exactly what the book was and why they'd want to read it. And you don't have to be as blatant as that, but you can be using, so for example, in my genre, urban fantasy, it'll often be things like for example, if it was a wolf shifter, putting the word wolf into the title, it's just a really great way to indicate what it's going to be about. Or I'm just trying to think, come on, help me here.
Or a dragon, that kind of thing.
Having dragon in there, like having letting people know exactly what the story is about.
Even though you're probably going to have it in the graphic, it's still the SEO, isn't it? It's still the search engine that somebody's going to bring up straight away, and there it is. There's your book.
And even ones like, so think of, we talked about Lucy's Score, like things we hide from the light, which is not necessarily blatant, but it's like, okay, so she's going to be talking about things that are kind of underneath and things that are kind of the kind of darker side of relationships or whatever, even though it's a bright flowery, I think it's the pink cover that's that
it is, and
it looks like it's bright and flowery, but actually you kind of know that it's going to have a lot of emotion and angst and those other things just based on that title. So it is still doing some heavy lifting, even though it's not as keyword heavy as I'm talking about. So
and I think the difference here again is Lucy's Score, so she's already a multi-million year seller. But when you're starting out, we're aiming here at those of us that are starting, and so this is where you need to be really more in your face with things.
And also, if you are going for that type of flowery cover, the title is going to be even more important, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Because as well as the SEO, like people looking at it in the thumbnail, they go, oh, that's interesting. But if they can't see the words, if the title doesn't mean anything to them, then
if it's a mystery, you put mystery in there, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the other thing we want to talk about with titles is words to avoid, things not to say.
Well, we know this from personal experience. The first and only book that the Spa Girls wrote together had the word but in it. Was it but? Yeah, it was
but.
And we even had a little asterisk where the U was, but it was still, we were unable to advertise it on Amazon. We couldn't advertise it on Facebook. And even though but is such an innocuous word, we changed it to kick it to the curb.
So we had it was author overwhelm, kick it
author overwhelm.
And it was kick it in the butt. Is that what the original
kick
one
author overwhelm in the butt. Yeah, something like that. And they didn't like it. They didn't like it even with the asterisks.
So now look, have I seen particularly dark romance with some fairly obvious misspellings of the F-U-C-K word? Yes. Would I do that? Personally, no, because I don't know. It's a tricky one, but, you know, again, these are often authors that have already got a massive audience. So I think, again, starting out, I would just watch any sort of like swear words I wouldn't use in there. Even the word bloody, like for us, it can be bloody as in there's blood, and
in New Zealand it's not a swear word.
A very light swear word, very low key. My grandmother would have not appreciated me saying it, but I would steer clear of anything.
And anything I think maybe PG, because you can get thrown. You can get thrown, for example, if you're a romance author, into the erotica dungeon. And which is where Amazon doesn't promote your book out to anyone and doesn't want,
if it's kind like of BDSM or even alpha, like there's different words, and I would and it does change, and you know, Amazon does things that we don't always understand or that we don't know, or that they might suddenly make a decision. So this is where I think hooking into a author group in the genre that you're writing is really important, and asking there if you're not quite sure about something. You want people that are actually publishing in your particular subgenre that will understand or may have learned the hard way.
I think and because it's really hard, because if you have got some of these elements in your book, you want to indicate it to readers, but at the same time not use it in the title, I think, or in the subtitle, just somehow. And there are ways that people, for example, in dark romance, are indicating without having to blatantly say the words.
Exactly.
And I think again, what Shah's saying, go to research, right? Like go to the Facebook group with other authors in that genre, but also look on Amazon and the other platforms.
There's often almost like a coded shorthand, and so as we're talking about, or we've already mentioned about symbols, so there might be, you know, something symbolic, although we'll talk about that in a minute, but there's often a sort of a coded language around it, where when you talk about his, you know, dominated by the billionaire kind of thing, you know, you kind of know that that's going to be a BDSM without saying, you know, this is what it is. We're not saying hide things, we're saying on the cover particularly, be cautious about what you put on there, and then you be mindful about what's in the blurbs as well, that kind of, you know. So I think it really does pay to go into the community that's currently publishing in that, and the indie community, because what's traditionally published is a different, they have different playbook.
Exactly. Okay, so that's good. So that's all the things I think we wanted to talk about in terms just of the cover, and just use your cover and your title, your title, and use your subtitle. So if you've called it the I can't think, like the domineering billionaire, I don't know, whatever, then the subtitle should be a second chance, lost baby, werewolf, romance, or whatever. And I know that's completely mismatched, but you get the point, right?
Exactly.
So just make sure that you put some of the tropes in the and then put it on the cover, because at Amazon at least likes the subtitle to be on the cover, and you know, and I know that people get away with stuff without it being on the cover and whatever, but according to the official terms of service, that is my understanding. I don't know, has it changed in the years since I
possibly again, you know, we always say go to the source. It will tell you, you know, like Amazon actually in KDPs has
all that information,
guidelines on there, and so do the other retailers. So you know, yeah.
All right. So subtitle. So the other thing. So let's go back to the actual visual concept of the cover. So number one, I guess we would say, is research other covers in your genre for that, to see what they're looking like.
Absolutely.
Whether you want to have a typography cover or a image cover, that's two very different looks. And as we all know, the different genres have completely different looks. But I think what it comes down to, and we were talking about this before we came on, is the emotion that we want readers to feel as they read our books, but as they look at that cover and that title, and they kind of go, I know from that cover and title that I'm going to get the emotional experience that I want to get, and that'll be what helps them to one click, as well as the blurb. So what are some of the, like, I just want to talk about this, like some of the emotions that, for example, people feel in the different genres. So when someone reads a cozy mystery share, what do you think is the emotion they're looking for, and what do you think that the cover
it's all about the mystery. It's all about the mystery and the type of cozy mystery it is, because as I've said before, there's culinary cozy mysteries, but there's also pets and animal cozy mysteries, there's witchy, there's paranormal cozy mysteries. So that is immediately what you need to convey. I mean, a culinary cozy mystery is different to a paranormal cozy mystery simply because of the paranormal aspect. So you have to have, you know, a witch's hat or a black cat, or, you know, something like that, or, you know, a wand or whatever. And you can get that in the typography. In fact, the latest covers that I've just purchased have all of that around the words, you know, like a witch's hat and a cat and blah, blah, blah. Whereas the culinary is like a plate of food, but maybe has a knife with some blood on it, or, you know, I've got one with blackmail, and so there's a letter, you know, and all the, you know, how you have the letters cut out and put on a piece of paper. So there's a, you know, there's one of those, and, you know, immediately, you know, probably without even reading the title, that what the kind of mystery is going to be.
I like
but
that.
Also, you've got the happier colours on there, though. So you've got this sort of, so you've got that for the cozy. It's that good feeling as well. So you're not going to get somebody jumping out from the shadows at the reader kind of thing. Like it's it's sort of a to
vibe
me it feels it feels like a welcoming place to go and have a mystery.
And I think with cozies, from my perspective, it's like the, you know, the culinary cozy is there's something warm and home based and welcoming around the preparation and the food aspect of it. Like it's kind of, there might be a murder happening, but it's kind of like a there's that warm and welcoming environment. And same with animals. I think animals on the cover, it's kind of like it's like when you think of social media, what are the most popular social media posts? It's always animals. I don't even it's like, why? But it is.
Another trope is vacation. You know, that people are going on vacation and something happening, like a cruise or something like that. And there's a whole slew of cruise ship mysteries. But you know, immediately on the cover, there's a blooming cruise ship. So you know,
that's funny. So it's all about. So that to me is like the vibe of cozy mystery is about kind of cozy. I mean, it says it in the name, right? Like there's a mystery to solve. So people like the idea of kind of being smart enough to solve the mystery and figure it out, and puzzles,
there's a sense
and
of
clues
fun
and that kind of aspect. But also that it's not going to be horrific, gory, crime-filled, gritty streets of Chicago, half the characters dying kind of book either. But and then you think of that kind of thriller. So if we're going to go to a thriller or one of those psychological thrillers, which I don't read, but I know exactly. People, you know, you think of those covers with a silhouette of a person walking away, and they've got those strong lines and bold colors, and you know
brick
exactly
buildings
you know exactly what the kind of look it is, because it matches the feel of the book. is kind of what we're getting to
here. Tone matches the
So what other genres, like what other another genre you can talk to, Shah? Like what do you think? I was thinking really...
with romance, it's a good way to signal the heat level. So if you've got a fully clothed couple on there that are sort of standing there, maybe holding hands or kind of looking at each other, or now this has changed slightly, so I'm going to go with the photorealistic covers first of all. That usually indicates a heat level if they've got clothes on, or whether it's him shirtless with just his abs kind of thing. That usually indicates a higher heat level. In saying that, there has definitely been I think a trend towards putting kind of the illustrated covers on romances that and I have heard some people have issues with this because it looks sort of like a really sweet, almost a YA type romance. But inside,
they look like romantic comedies.
Yes,
yeah, they do. But inside, there's
all sorts.
All sorts. No shaming here. They're great, but I'm just saying that is a bit of a trend, and I think,
and that's about knowing your genre, right? Like being aware of comparable books in the genre you're aiming for.
Absolutely. And that's, over the last couple of years particularly, because initially, I hate the term chick lit, but initially back in the Bridget Jones era, so what are we talking? 20 years ago now, probably.
Maybe. Easy, probably.
Let's not put a number on that, Shah.
Okay, sorry.
But it was
sort of, those, silly little woman books kind of thing, usually a single gal, looking for a man. And now it's had that resurgence, but it's a different kind of illustration. So, but it's been very much in the last couple of years or so.
And that's a really good point, actually, that cover trends and cover they do change, and you have to kind of keep up to them. And
it's
actually,
like fashion,
a cover can change. Like, in fact, you should be looking to upgrade your cover every, like if there's,
I can't think of a single successful author that we've had on the podcast over the last 9 years that hasn't updated their covers at some point.
At some point,
At some point, maybe, and often more than once. They've gone through different cycles. So
and this harks back to the conference with what's her name? Laurelin Paige. Thank you. I was thinking of someone else
who we got on the podcast afterwards because we love her so much.
And so listen to her podcast, but she was the one that first kind of said to us, when I was looking for a different audience, I changed my cover. When I felt like one cover had done its dash and I'd gotten as many people who were interested in that look as I could, I switched it up and found a new audience with a slightly different cover. And I mean, she did the same with pricing. So that was another, and we were like, what? People can change their prices and their covers? Like that was, was a big deal at that time. This was,
and I mean, you're really only stopped by, frankly, the time and the money that you can afford to actually do this. So it's not a necessary. It's an easy thing to do in terms of the practical side of it, but obviously, it's something that you need a few sales under your belt in order to afford to do.
Well, especially if you've got a series, because that gets really, really expensive because you're also talking print as well.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, so this is not something we're suggesting you do every 5 minutes, but it is a really good idea. And I think Alexa mentioned this when we talked to her the other week, that she just regularly checks the genre, top 100.
Absolutely.
I think she said even almost every day she'll just go into the top 100 in her genre, have a look and see who's there, maybe read some blurbs, maybe look at some covers and just get a feel for it. So just so she knows and has a really good sense of what's happening in her genre. Like literally that's it.
I think that's really, really smart. And it's, I mean, if you can't manage it every week, then maybe once a month you could have a little Friday afternoon job and just pop that in your diary, and I think that's really smart.
I think so. I think
a way of making that easier is we've had him on as our friend Nat Connors from Kindletrends, and he does a report on that, so he does it for you and identifies the top 100, top 200, and part of that is also he does the cover collage. So these are the top sellers in that subgenre, and that's really, really helpful because you can see immediately the types of covers that are coming through, and any changes that are being picked up in there as well.
Even the colors. I find that fascinating. Like there are definitely color trends. Like for example, urban fantasy is definitely dark colors and a lot of purple. and a lot of, those, because in a lot of glowing things like glowing swords and glowing magic and whatever. But, but if there was that to change, and actually I think in a lot of ways that's because of the influence of the fantasy romance and the typography covers, there are definitely covers moving towards just the typography and the using symbols on the cover to mark those changes. And in fact, actually, that's something I wanted to talk about, symbols, in terms of, so we talked about symbolism in the title, but symbols on the cover. And that was something that Chris Fox, I think, first mentioned to us, that's my first recollection of it. And I was quite struck by it at the time. And he was talking about in terms of, so he's science fiction, is his genre, I think. And he talked about, spaceships on the cover, like you kind of testing out different types of covers in his genre. He discovered that you slap a spaceship in one of his covers, and that is definitely going to do better than something that's a little bit less on, whatever. I don't know what else you'd put, some stars or something. But sorry, I don't. Versus other covers. So we have the symbolism, right? And so for a typography cover in urban fantasy or fantasy romance, they'll often have interwoven between the font things like, there'll be a dagger that's coming in front of some of the letters, or a snake. I think the Lee Bardugo, I don't know how to say her surname, I'm really sorry if I'm butchering it, but we all kind of know who I mean. And she has, like, on one of the covers, has like a snake winding its way in between, which kind of gives the right kind of creepy feel for, and then there'll be, but that's symbolism, right? Like, and so what else is there?
If you've got a shifter romance, you absolutely need to have a moon on there. Full
moon and a wolf.
It's that kind of thing. We humans are looking for those symbols, aren't we? We're looking for it. So
those cues,
And again, it's not something that a reader's going to go, oh well, I'll only buy a book with a moon on it. But
no,
it's the symbolism that they're picking up without even realizing it about the covers. And we do it too. Like, I'll look at a book and I go, oh, that's intriguing, or I'll look at a cover and go, oh well, I know what that's going to be about. I'm going to like that one because it has a moon on the cover and it looks a bit spooky or whatever. And I mean, we talk about cozy mysteries, the cat on the cover, or the those
a witch's hat.
And I mean, even if I look at your like the paranormal ones in you kind of have those same kind of paranormal colors, like obviously purple is a paranormal color, it's
purple
and
green
so versus the romance ones, which tend to be a different look and feel. And even as you say, the symbols in a romance cover, if it's that will often indicate the heat level, as Shah was saying, but like the I'm just thinking of some of those man chest covers that are just like the guy's head's been cut off. Like, we're not even interested in the poor man's head or what he looks like. It's all about his chest. Like, and let's objectify him completely.
They get a hard rap from a lot of people, but honestly, they work.
That's what someone's looking for. Like, they're like,
no
matter what you think about them,
and to be fair, it's not necessarily about objectifying them. It's often about the fact that you see the same stock images used, so it's easy to chop the head off. So
so you don't realize.
Well, also because you look at the cover and you think, oh, I must have read that because I recognize that couple, and actually it's just the way it is. So if you chop the head off, it's just a body.
But the man chest cover says to the right reader what kind of book it's going to be. It's symbolism. Absolutely. It's like, it's perfect. It does its job. It's not a judgment of anything else. It's just that cover says to the right person. Whereas I'm looking up at the covers that Cher has on and her, so if you're watching on YouTube, you know what I'm talking about, but her romances are like, the covers with someone holding hands on the beach, or the couple kind of being a bit more closer, because those are the billionaire ones, but they're still fully dressed and they're wearing this, he's wearing the suit and tie, he looks like a billionaire, like there's symbolism.
You wouldn't have him in his gardening clothes and say he's a billionaire.
I can't imagine. I'd love to see a cover that had a dude in a gardening clothes and see, does that sell? Like, I'm not sure. But anyway.
So now Lenny Singh has a contemporary romance, and he's a landscaper gardener, but he's shirtless because he's out digging. So
which is what they all do, dig shirtless. The other one is like a Montana cowboy kind of one, and you have the guy with the hat.
You want the hat.
It's got a Stetson.
You want those sort of warm colours. Depending on if it's a suite, he's going to be clothed preferably with a horse in the background. If it's a sexy one, he's for some reason going to be wearing his hat and his jeans, but
and jeans with no top on. Yeah, awesome. Got to show the abs. And it's, I think the thing you have to kind of remember about any of that is that we're selling the word that pops to mind is fantasy, and I don't want to mean that it's a kind of something unattainable or bad or anything like that, but I just mean that we're selling a certain kind of environment, and people are reading to almost as an escapism.
Exactly.
So we're not we don't want to sell them a paunchy dude with, I don't know, chest,
unless it's a dad bod cover, in which case he's still usually a happy usually quite a handsome guy, but they often
anyway, just
it's a tricky one, that one.
Do what's relevant to your genre.
I would say it's this way, right? If you're that sounds random, but I do have a point. If you're a cruise line, what are the photos that you have on your brochure? You have the beautiful, perfect weather, you have the crazy flat sea, it's got, the glittering jewel-like beach in the background, happy people. You don't have people throwing their guts up seasick and everybody getting COVID on board and fighting for you don't have that.
Jumping into the lifeboats because
you want to portray it the best way you can.
And two more examples of that, and I'm not suggesting you should do either of these things, but you think about all the old Coke ads used to be about people running about and having fun, beautiful bodies, and they were like laughing and often by the water for some reason, like having at the beach drinking, like
jump into the water with your bottle of Coke.
Having the best time, and they were like, look at us drinking a bottle of Coke and whatever. And there was never, a verse, and also smoke ads. Like, I mean, you're not allowed to advertise cigarette smoking anymore, but think of like the Marlboro Man, like, and
it was hot, right?
Like, and that was about being cool. That was about I'm going to be the staunchest, coolest person in the room by having,
and I can only do that with a cigarette
coming out of my mouth and destroying my lungs, but I will look cool, and that's whatever. But so that's kind of what we're doing too. We're essentially selling our.
I mean, you're not allowed to advertise them here in New Zealand, but I'm wondering, curious.
I don't know.
I bet you are.
Yeah, you probably are overseas. Like, we're just this isolated little.
Anyhow, and isn't it funny that we know about the Marlboro Man, who is the quintessential American
guy,
of course, and yet here we are, growing up from the opposite side of the world, and that still impacted us, and you can still visualize it.
That's good advertising.
Absolutely.
Hitting the mark. That's what we want to do.
So that's what you're doing. That's what the cover is actually literally doing. So you're hitting the mark. You're, and it's not about. And if you think about those examples we've just given, it's about an experience, a feeling, an emotion of like, wouldn't it be amazing? How would I feel to be on this cruise ship? Wouldn't it be I'd love to be that person sitting there and doing that. So when we're thinking of it in terms of covers in our books, it's like, what is the emotional feeling that people are wanting when they read our books? And so for a romance, from my perspective, it's always that delicious, yummy feeling when they finally get together and they've overcome everything.
The happy ever after.
Like sometimes I'm like wincing as I'm reading the black moment. Like I often like hate the black moment, but you have to have it, right? Like to get to the
feels at the end.
The feels at the end. And I love all those little meet cutes because that's what I'm reading for. I'm reading for the experience of falling in love, right? So you've got to be indicating from your title and your thing the experience of falling in love in a romance. And so for a cozy mystery, it's like people love the challenge of figuring out the mystery before anyone else knows about it, or before they and also the cozy feels of like the culinary baking a cake or having a cat familiar, or those kind of feels. And in urban fantasy, for me, it's like, when I read an urban fantasy, I love it to be kind of that kick butt female who's kind of going out there and doing and saying the things that I would never ever be able to do and say in real life, for me personally, but I would freaking love to say them. I would love to be that kick-ass female going out and doing those things, and those are the emotions that we're trying to portray in this little cover, thumbnail size.
Super easy. Just go ahead and do it.
Just do that, right? No worries at all. Oh my god, I always think of, and I can't remember if it was where she said this, Theodora Taylor was talking about universal fantasies, and which is kind of what we're talking about here in terms of that. And she said she always used to think about the woman who was she's got 3 kids, and they're kind of all yelling and screaming behind her, and she's just cooked dinner, and they complained about dinner because it was like vegetables and it was a bit, you know, it was undercooked or overcooked, you know, something, because she was busy and she's worked all day and she's been, you know, and then she's just shoved them off into the lounge to go watch TV, and she's by herself in the kitchen doing the dishes, and just life's a little bit hard and a little bit crap. And wouldn't she just love to read about some other place and some other time? I think she was talking about one of her monster romance books, you know, like giving that woman who's just, you know, there's a lot going on and it's not exactly ideal life, standing there washing the dishes after working a long hard day. She wants to disappear into another world where some woman is being ravaged by a handsome alien man who takes, you know, does all of those tropes that they have in those kind of books. I guess, and that's what people want. Like,
and also has a robot that does all the housework or
something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
You know, I mean, Beauty and the Beast was, you know, servants that love to serve, you know, all those kinds of things. Like, that's why that trope is so popular. It's because we all, in our everyday real lives, don't have that. Anyway, that's a whole other stuff. But you know, that's what we're trying to indicate with these covers. And I think there's definitely ways to do that will tell people the right, or give them the indication that they're looking for, that this book is going to be the book that's going to take them away into that other fantasy, right? Like,
so, and I think just on a practical note, if you're considering whether it's a pre-made or with your, you know, trying to figure out if what you have already is working, do a little collage, get the 100 or at least the top 50 selling books, indie books in your particular subgenre, put your cover, you know, create a collage on your phone, and there's lots of different apps you can use, and see if it fits. And what you want it to do is fit. You do not want it to stand out for the wrong reasons. You know, if everything's purple and blues and got glows, and your one is a stark white background, it's not going to fit. So
and also just the one thing that we hadn't touched on yet was because we were talking about typography in the respect of it being about the cover and how the cover looks, but we actually haven't touched on the fonts that people
really
are going to use.
There's conventions with that.
And I think that that's really, really important, because some fonts just do not go with certain genres, and some look great, and some you can tweak and make your own, or you can actually buy fonts.
Yes.
But they really have to match what's going at the moment.
Absolutely.
I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's also rules around, or not rules, but like guidelines that you should probably follow around how many different types of font you have on the cover.
Yes.
Is that like you would 2 maybe?
I would say 2. I mean, very occasionally 3, but usually it's 2. It's usually, you know, and it is very genre specific as well, you know, so there's a lot to it, and I know that it's exhausting and you just want to get that book up there, but you're doing yourself a disservice of all the time that you put into it if you're just going to, you know, make something quickly and PowerPoint kind of thing and just you know,
put it all in Times New Roman or something.
And to be fair, a lot of this maybe your designer could do a lot of the heavy lifting. Like, you say to them, okay, I'm writing in urban fantasy, I want a female on the cover, this is the title, make it for me. And hopefully a good designer will know the expectations.
They will be looking at it.
Of that genre.
We are going to link in the show notes to the different people that we've talked about today, including the Chris Fox episode, but one we did with Rebekah Haskell was very good with cover designers, and she talks about how to, you know, about the contrast that you need in the cover so it stands out, you know, not all the same tones of colors, so they all sort of, it feels quite flat. You want things that contrast. And
like I think I remember her talking about, you know, those black and white images that people show to babies, because babies can only see kind of almost 2 colors, or can't, I don't know why that is, but something about babies, and that's what you want like the strong black, not actually black, but the stronger, darker colors versus the lighter white, and and I always remember that, like when I'm looking at covers, and I think it is, especially at the smaller sizes, right? Like we see the differences. So sometimes you will look at a cover and it will be the perfectly beautiful, lovely cover, but it's all just same tone, and that is actually going to be not that useful to you in that kind of environment. The other thing we were going to talk about is trad versus indie covers. And we've kind of talked about it in terms of $1 million selling author versus, mid-list newbie author.
You can make different choices.
You make different choices. We do. We have to make different choices to anything that Lucy Score could put out any old cover these days, and people would buy it because it's Lucy Score. Same with Bella Andre, same with all the big names. We can't be going, oh well, Lucy does it, so I'm going to do it, right? Because that's not going to work for us. And I think it was also the kind of covers that traditional publishing houses put on the covers for their authors, and it's often nothing to do with the author. It's all about the marketing department of the trad.
They might not even get a say.
They wouldn't even get a say. The reasons they're doing things and the decisions they're making are different to the decisions that we make as indie authors. And I think you need to bear that in mind. Don't look around for indie authors in your genre, not following what trad publishers are doing.
Well, they're designed often just for the retail store environment, so they've got a bigger space, they've got a bigger cover where, like I said before, when you're indie, you're usually going to be purchased off a phone, and it's tiny, so it's got to do a different different approach.
And in a lot of ways, the trad pub people are learning off the indie people in the way that we've been selling. And
it's
making
not the other way
changes to
around.
us.
We're not following them. It's the other way around.
Definitely. So those are important things to keep in mind. Was there anything else that we needed to mention?
No,
I think just go into it. Keep an open mind as much as possible. And I think it's totally fine to have your own, you're wanting to see a specific scene denoted on your cover, or you're wanting a specific title that you've had as you're rewriting the book, but you really need to take off your emotive creator hat and put on your emotive marketer hat. Like, you can still use emotion, we're not saying that, but if you're doing this to sell books, you really have to approach it from quite a analytical way.
And don't get hung up over the color of a person's hair. The only time I would suggest that you should get hung up over it if it's a character has long white blonde hair and it's a massive part of the storyline, and it has to, but if they've just got brown hair versus blonde hair, and you've got a couple image, and the female character doesn't happen to have quite the right color hair, don't get hung up on that. It's not about that, and someone reading the book is probably going to forget the cover anyway once they're into it. The cover is a sales tool, not a perfect representation of your book.
And again, I totally get that you have this, often when you're writing, you have this image in your head of what you want it to be on there, and that's totally fine. You can still create that, and you can use it maybe as a bonus material for your readers or that kind of thing, but if it's not going to do the heavy lifting to sell the book, then it's not serving you in that way. So you can still enjoy it, but just use it in a different way.
100%.
Okay.
Well, I think that's us. I think we've tried to distill everything.
Hopefully you got something out of that.
It's a couple of things, something.
And if you're wondering, give us some cover designers to use. We've talked about cover designers in various episodes, but again, this is going to your subgenre, going into author groups, usually Facebook, and asking or looking in books that you read in your subgenre, and often they will credit the cover designer in there as well. So, personal recommendation is a really good one. But also, there's all you have to do is let your fingers do the Googling. They're out there.
So many out there.
At all different price points as well.
And that's the thing to remember. It doesn't have to be, but it is a really important part of it. So we want to spend time getting it right. So don't scrimp on the cover or the title or the subtitle or your name. Can you scrimp on your name? I don't think you can. Anyway, all right. Well, thank you all for listening to another episode of the Spa Girls podcast. Where can we be found?
We can be found at spagirlspodcast.com. And if you'd like to come along and support the show at Patreon by buying us a coffee or coming along and joining our Mastermind Facebook group, where you can share your covers in there and get feedback and suggestions, and just
getting quite buzzy in there now. Like we've
all kinds of collaborative things in there, which is awesome. And if you like personal coaching as well, so that's at patreon.com/Spa Girls Podcast.
Yeah. And we've had some awesome coaching sessions lately.
We have done
a
lot of coaching lately.
And we love it.
Proud of our team.
And it's super rewarding for us seeing the success of people. So it's great.
It's awesome. So thank you all for listening to another episode of the Spa Girls Podcast. We'll be back again next week with another episode. But for now, farewell.
Keep well.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.